wonderful introduction. Thank you, Devin, for helping to coordinate all of this. And thank you all for coming. Last night, I was in DC, and I went to an event at American University. It was a good friend of mine who works for the Heritage Foundation, which is a prominent conservative think tank. And she was giving a talk about media bias from a conservative point of view. I identify as a liberal Democrat, born and raised in a family of liberal Democrats. But part of what I've been doing for the past 5 years is delving into ideas and perspectives that I disagree with, dealing with unpleasant attitudes with respect to issues of race and class and gender, you name it. So this was a good friend of mine, and I was happy to go, and I was going to support her and the work that she's doing. And during her talk, she was giving an example about mass shootings. And the point that she was making is that there was a significant shooting that had taken place that was not addressed in the media, in part because it was in a conservative area, in a place in which the majority was conservatives in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And she was making her point, and there were some things that, one could dispute or one could argue or one could quibble about. But the point was that there is a bias in liberal media against conservatives, and many people would say that there's a bias in conservative media against liberals. I think it goes both ways. She was giving her talk, and she said, I'm happy to take questions throughout the talk. I'm happy to take questions after the talk. And someone perked up. You could tell that they were bothered by some things that she'd said. And this guy starts hammering away at a case about Roger Stone and collusion and all of these bad actors that Donald Trump is associated with. I want to be clear. I am no fan. I'm no supporter of Donald Trump. I think I'm deeply disturbed by everything that he stands for, everything he represents. That's my personal view. But this is a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, someone whom I've been on stage with, someone that I've been interviewed by, someone that I enjoy her company. We share many things in common despite having political differences. And so I wanted her to deliver a successful talk, a successful address. And it's now being interrupted, and the questions are turning more into statements than questions. And so I have this instinctive reaction. When a speaker is speaking, you let them finish, you give them the chance to make their case. And I had to pause and remind myself of everything that I've been talking about. Listening and being patient and being alert and being kind, being generous, being thoughtful, being tactful. There was a part of me that wanted to say, hold on. If we want to talk about evidence and if we want to talk about examples, this stuff can go both ways. And so where does that come from? Well, one, it's my friend, right? So I had to confront my own biases. We have all kinds of biases. Familial, biases based on our political views, based on our moral values, based on our religious beliefs. And this was just the most recent example for me of a time in which I had to say, hold up, I've got to be rational about this. This guy just disagrees. The truth of the matter was I actually agreed with some of what he was saying. But my bias was that the person who was talking was someone that I knew. Right? And so part of what that underscored for me, Dustin Hoffman, who's an actor, he did a master class, and he said something that really resonated with me. He said, part of what makes acting unique, compelling, attractive and interesting to so many people, something that captivates us and holds our attention, is the fact that it's truer than anything we ever say and live in our daily lives. almost everything we say is a euphemism. We think about it before we say it. So much of what we think initially we don't say, right? That's part of being a human being. It's part of being rational. It's part of being self-conscious. It's part of being self-aware. And so as I've engaged with all manner of issues, I've tried to remember that there is a sense in which all of us on a daily basis are making all kinds of judgments very quickly, assessments very quickly, based upon how we should address a friend or a relative versus, being in a job interview and talking to someone who's assessing you under those circumstances. We're making judgments all the time about people. Somebody walks in the room and we've already made judgments about, do we like this person? Can we trust this person? Can we connect with this person? Do we think they're competent? I think it's a part of survival. It's part of being a human being. If there is a threat present, we want to recognize it. And so, in the beginning, when I got to Williams College 2014, I was eager to engage with views that I disagreed with. I wanted to make waves on my college campus. I wanted to make a positive difference. I wanted to gain a deeper understanding of issue areas that I wanted to make a difference in. Inequality, economic inequality, the intersection of inequality in education, healthcare, list goes on. And so part of what I was trying to do actively was have conversations with people that I disagreed with. And, I had the assumption in the beginning, the understanding in the beginning that it was not going to be simple, that people are complicated, that circumstances vary. But as I continued doing this work, I joined a group on campus called Uncomfortable Learning. The main mission of the group was to broaden the range of political discourse, to broaden the range of dialogue on campus around issues of the day. Sounded like something that I should be a part of, so I joined the group. I said I want to amplify this, increase the intensity a bit. Now, part of that is like a part of my personality and a part of who I am. But a part of my thinking was that in order to really make waves, in order to really achieve change, I've got to move the needle. I've got to push my own intellectual limits and the intellectual limits of my peers. And so I started having conversations with as many people as I could in dining halls, dorms, classrooms, after class, before class, just walking, talking, hanging out with people on campus. I'm a people person, and so I love parts of it. But it was also very challenging because you find out that so many of the intense reactions that we see to certain comments, to certain actions, comes from a very deep place. It's not just about what takes place, what just happens in the world. There are psychological reasons, there are social reasons, there are cultural reasons that tie back to experiences that we've had when we grew up, that tie into our peer groups and the views of our friends and the beliefs that we're familiar with. And so while I'm doing this work with Uncomfortable Learning, trying to invite speakers to campus that I disagree with, backlash is inevitable. It's more intense than I expected, but inevitable. One of the challenges I encounter is that my college president is less decisive with respect to where he stands when it comes to having robust and open discussion on college campuses. He was worried about bad press. He was worried about protests getting out of control. He wanted to, in the same way that I did, he wanted to make sure that students felt included, that students were able to make the most of their education, that students were developing the skills needed to go out into the world and make a positive difference. And so, when I invited speakers that were on the more controversial end, when it came to race and when it came to feminism, some of them were disinvited. So I'm in the midst of this battle. And for me, this is about not just my own education and my own experience, but this is also about developing a deeper understanding of people, honing and improving my own ability to communicate and go out into the world and make a difference. And so when he disinvites speakers, there's points of pride, there's disagreement, there's my values and my stance and his values and his stance, and there's a part of me that's like, okay, let's have this out. I'm going to write in response, and that's what I did. I wrote some things in the Washington Post. I wrote some things in the Wall Street Journal. I wrote in response, dissenting opinions. I disagreed. And I encourage that. At the same time, I reached the understanding that our subject position matters. My position was different from his. He was the college president, I was a student. He had to think about the campus as a whole. He had to think about donors. He had to think about alumni. He had to think about the effects of social media. And I didn't have to think about those things. I was thinking about some of them. I was thinking about the work that I was doing, the conversations that I was having with students individually. And so what I'm really getting at here is that obviously controversial issues are controversial for a reason. But the position that you're in matters too. We're often not thinking about what it's like for somebody on the other end. Whether it's someone who has a different personal experience, a different set of beliefs, a different set of values, a different occupation, a different living situation. And so what I learned is to try to consider those different sets of circumstances and to really try to lead with questions. We all know that social media has a huge impact on how we engage with issues of the day. I mean, you see one tweet that you don't like, and bias gets mobilized and people get galvanized, and there's a lot of discord, and there's a lot of division, and there's a lot of doubt. I believe in trying to build common ground. At the same time, I believe in confronting these things head on. I think we've got to feel again. I think part of the way we dig ourselves out of this hole that we're in, where there's so much political polarization, is to say, you know what really bothers me, and here's why, but to not just do it without consideration of the tone. How does it sound to other people? I'll give you an example. There was a student when I was at Williams. I invited a speaker to campus named John Derbyshire. Everyone thought this guy was a racist. Maybe he really is a racist. He didn't end up coming because my college president disinvited him. Everyone thought he was a racist. So the objections are obvious, right? Why are you going to invite a racist to campus? Why are you going to invite somebody who is a supporter of Donald Trump's immigration policy? My perspective was, I want to be prepared to combat these views. I want to understand the obstacles that I'm facing. I want to have a better understanding of the arguments of my opponents and so forth. I had a conversation with a student who told me about his family's experience with immigration and deportation. And for me, what that showed me was that this wasn't just about some abstract value. This wasn't about open dialogue. This wasn't about some philosophical conversation. His experience with his own family, with his own fears of being separated from his family. That's a whole nother level. And so, I had to take a step back and I had to say, okay, if I really want to find things in common, if I want to broaden the scope, broaden the banner of uncomfortable learning, if I want more people to feel like they can participate in this, I've got to lead with questions, and I've got to frame things in a way that gives a better sense of what I'm really trying to do. I'm not trying to make anyone feel uncomfortable such that they cannot have a productive intellectual conversation. I think there's value in stepping outside of your comfort zone, but we all have sensitivities. So these individual conversations that I had with people made me take a step back. I think that if we pay close attention to our own feelings about issues of race and issues of class, about the things we're reading and the things we're seeing on social media, if we pay close attention to our own feelings and if we ask ourselves why we feel a certain way, it can give us a better understanding of how other people might feel. When it comes to actually engaging with people, I think we've got to resist the temptation to make assumptions and to rely on those assumptions. We all have, psychologists call it pre-instructional knowledge. This sense of the world that comes from all these things we learned before we even started going to school. That's a part of who we are. But I think we've got to question that. We've got to test those assumptions. I remember I was a freshman at the time. I was at Williams. There was this girl that I really liked. And she was taking a class in art history. Art history is it's like the best major at Williams, apparently. The art history department at Williams, it's Williams' best, strongest academic area. And I was having a conversation with her, and she told me, there's this professor, he's brilliant, he's got a lot of knowledge, but he won't answer my questions, yada, yada, yada. And so, it's very like me to do this. I said, okay, what's his name? I went and read his books, sent him an email, said, could we get coffee? Turns out this guy is like as conservative as you can get. I mean, down the line, you pick an issue. And so I was prepared to talk about art history, and we ended up having this broad political conversation. But he was pleasant, and he was kind, and he was charming, and he was funny, and I'm still in touch with him now. I had my own motivations, right? Like I wanted to see if I could get a better read on him, and see if I could get some of her questions answered, see if I could save the day, and all these things. But what I really gained from it in the end was, don't judge a book by its cover. We really don't know other people's motivations, other people's intentions. It's tough now because of how fast news cycles are and because of how we've got like instantaneous connectivity, right? If you want to text someone who's somewhere else, within a matter of seconds you can reach them and you can say anything. And I think it makes it easy to be more reactive and less proactive and less thoughtful. Now, I think social media and technological advancements are great for many reasons. And I'm not saying we should just hedge our bets, but that we should think about the work that certain ideas do for us. When we think about our own values and our own beliefs, what work is that idea really doing? Is it about our personal belief system? Is it tied to a personal experience? Is it about our sense of pride? Everyone is proud of something. Right? So, I mean, ideas of equality and justice, values of hard work, you name it, these things are not just abstract. The connection that they have to us is personal. And so I think if we interrogate that, it can give us a window. It can open up possibilities for having more fruitful conversations. The summer after I graduated, I was at a conference. It's called Resource Bank for the Heritage Foundation. And one of the keynote speakers was Newt Gingrich. Bill Clinton is my favorite president. Someone who spent a lot of time studying people, who understands people well, incredibly well. And so I'd see Newt Gingrich there, and I'm thinking, I want to have a debate with this guy, and I want to go at him, and I want to get an understanding of why did he try so hard to impede the progress of the Clinton administration. And honestly, I'm like ready for this intense debate. And then as soon as I meet him, he was so disarmingly genuine. I was still ready to kind of go at it, but he was very disarming. He asked me about my book, and he asked me about what I wanted to do. And I'm still pushing my points, right? I'm like, and this is what you did, and this is, you were impediment to progress, and you made politics a matter of war, which was really what he did. And I'm going at him, and he's not responding aggressively at all. He's asking me questions about what I'm doing. He's answering my questions honestly. He even acknowledged that through the interactions, all of the interactions he had with President Clinton, he was always impressed with the fact that Bill Clinton was able to compartmentalize, to, in the face of any number of challenges, still say, at the end of the day, I'm going to have to work with you if I want to get anything passed. If I want to get anything done, I'm still going to have to know what it is that you want. I'm going to have a sense of what I want. I'm going to have a sense of what's best for the American people. And I'm going to have a sense of where I'm willing to compromise and where I'm not willing to compromise. For someone who is so steeped in American politics, there's an intense political figure who has strong views, to be able to acknowledge that about a political enemy, a political opponent, was significant to me. And so that experience, and many others like it, give me faith in our ability to come together, in our ability to say, you know what, I might talk with you and I might interact, I might work with you, and we still won't agree at the end. That division and discord and doubt are not things that are just gonna go away. But that empathy and curiosity are better than anger and resentment. And I'm not saying there isn't a reason to feel angry. Donald Trump does stuff every day that ticks me off. I was ticked off last night when my friend was trying to give a talk and someone kept interrupting with questions. But I had to say, you know what? I'm for robust, open discussion, free debate. And this is, we all feel strongly about things. But I think we can stand taller. I think we can last longer. I think we can come together in cooperation for mutual enlightenment if we lead with listening, if we try to turn our assertions into questions, if we try to make better observations, if we try to pay closer attention to ourselves and how we're feeling and how others are feeling. I think we're stronger together. Thank you.